Welcome to Electric Bike Report. My name is John.
And I'm Griffin.
This week we're going to be talking about some new steel tariffs that are affecting e-bikes, and they've actually caused one premium e-bike manufacturer to pause shipments to the US.
Oh goody, more tariffs.
More tariffs. We're also going to be talking about two new electric trikes from a couple of different brands.
Three-wheeled fans rejoice.
And then we're going to wrap things up with a discussion about e-bike battery fires and what steps you can take to prevent them.
All that and more in this episode of the Weekly Recharge.
All right, jumping into this week's news, let's talk more about those steel tariffs that I mentioned. So in particular, these are the Section 232 tariffs that the Trump administration has put into place, and they add a 25% import tax on any steel products coming from the UK, but then a 50% import tax on steel products from anywhere else, essentially. And kind of looking at the list of line items that these tariffs apply to, we're looking at e-bikes, electric motorcycles, hand tools, stationary bikes, tractors, industrial tooling, and some household appliances, among other things. And then looking at e-bikes specifically, these are in addition to any tariffs that are already in place. So if we're looking at China, we're going back to last summer when the 25% Section 301 tariffs were put in place. So those still apply. We've got 20% from fentanyl tariffs and then 10% from reciprocal tariffs that are at least currently where that percentage is at. So, this is all kind of compounding together. Mm-hmm. But, looking at bikes, some e-bikes are made with steel frames, but in other cases, it's just a lot of bolts, screws, nuts, hardware, that sort of thing. So it's kind of unclear how much of a percentage of the bike these tariffs will apply to. And it's kind of, it seems to be a little bit confusing for how brands are breaking that down. And we've got a quote from Matt Van Enkvoort, who's the president and CEO of Marin Bikes.
Yeah, also sounds like a Bond villain name.
You're absolutely right. Yes, very much so. So he said, the question now is how granular we will need to go. For instance, can we report the frame and fork content, or do we need to get down to the level of hardware? So that would be derailleur pivots, motor internals, battery mounts, water bottle bolts, etc. And then looking at Bunch Bikes, they manufacture cargo bikes with steel frames. Their CEO, whose name is Aaron Powell, put out a statement kind of about how the code is broken down. So I mentioned that e-bikes and electric motorcycles are included, and those are currently under the same line item. So he proposes or wants to propose sort of separating those out because he's not really sure if e-bikes were intended to be the target of these tariffs, even though they currently are. But then about their bike specifically, Bunch Bikes plans to switch to aluminum frames, but kind of expects those to be subject to the Trump administration's aluminum tariffs down the road. So bottom line, it's just a lot of stuff kind of up in the air, and it's really hard to sift through. It's hard for us to decipher. It's hard for brands to work out. And it's very confusing and hard to plan for everyone.
I was going to say, this is episode 46 now for John and I, and it feels like every other week we're kind of talking about these different tariffs that are going on. We know it's a lot, and it's very confusing even for us, although we're covering it every week. But the bottom line here is it obviously puts some stress and makes things a little bit more difficult on manufacturers to kind of accommodate for all this stuff. And, if e-bikes are still subject to this, moving forward, we're going to see more and more brands find reason to maybe, limit production, raise costs, things like that, which actually leads us into our next story.
Why, yes, it does. Yes.
All right. So Reese and Mueller has announced they are pausing e-bike shipments to the U.S. because of the new steel tariffs.
Yes.
That's right. So the company stated in an email that we need to take a few days to carefully evaluate the situation and its implications before proceeding with future steps. It also instructs dealers to pause daily orders and sell through existing stock until the company has a game plan in place to move forward. And, like most e-bikes these days, Reese and Mueller are primarily aluminum, but it seems that, constant unpredictability and potential for increased costs are having an impact on their ability to do business. Go figure. So we've seen some other brands like Stromer or Yamaha who have also pulled out of the U.S. in the past year. And so it's just going to be another one just being given an abundant amount of reasons to not do business here if we kind of keep making things more difficult. So
for sure,
we don't like seeing it, but as we've covered, we understand that planning anything long-term is nearly impossible. Tariffs in a constant game of whack-a-mole. So for those who are unfamiliar with the brand, they are considered one of the more premium e-bikes out on the market. A fantastic company that makes really, really great and phenomenal products. So it would be kind of a shame to see, that particular high end of the market lose another valued player.
Yeah, absolutely. But moving on to the electric trike releases. So a few weeks ago, we reviewed the XP Trike 2 from Lectric. That was the 500 watt model, but now the brand has released the upgraded 750 watt version. So that has a peak of 1,310 watts. There we go. I always get tripped up on that. And then 85 newton meters of torque. It also has a torque sensor instead of the cadence sensor on the 500 watt model. It has a larger battery, so that is 840 watt hours, and Lectric advertises up to 70 miles of range with that. There's a top speed of 17 miles per hour, so that's a couple miles per hour faster than the 500 watt model as well. And then this one has a whopping 6 color options. That's probably like the most that we've seen on a single model from Lectric at this point. So it has 3 from the base model, the 500 watt version. So those are Tempest Gray, Glacier Blue, and Stratus White. And then there are 3 new ones. Those are Dusk Blue, Phoenix Red, and Lavender Haze. And I think we've mentioned before that red looks really sharp in particular.
Absolutely.
So it also has kind of all the basic features as well. So you've got a suspension fork and suspension seat post, integrated lights, turn signals, a 415 pound payload capacity, and then this model is priced a little bit higher, but still very affordable at $17.99. And yeah, I mean, I think that there's an appetite out there for a little bit more of a powerful, faster trike. You know, we've gotten a lot of comments about that. So I personally expect this to kind of overtake the 500 watt model in sales.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And
About that.
It's been a really cool trend to kind of actually see from Lectric. They've been doing this for a little while now. I think it started with the Express, where they had the 500 and the 750. Saw that again on the XP4. Seeing it again here now on their trike. Different, power levels of motor for their product, which I think is an absolutely great thing. Every now and then I want to put, mom and pop on something a little bit more tame, maybe just a 500 watt. I know they're not tackling any intensive hills.
Sure.
But again, if you are loading it up or something like that and you want a little extra power, it's nice to kind of have that 750 watt option. So it will be really interesting to see how the trike community in particular responds. I could see it going either way of 500 is enough on 3 wheels, or maybe I do want the 750. So yeah, it will be interesting to kind of see how it plays out sales-wise for Lectric.
Definitely.
And then moving on to our last bit of news, Puck Puppy releases a full suspension electric trike called the Rottweiler. So the motor, a 750 or 500 watt with a peak of 960 watt paired with a torque sensor. A 720 watt hour battery with an estimated range of 42.55 miles. The suspension is an 80 millimeter fork and 2 rear shocks, which is really pretty cool and interesting. Don't see that every day.
Yeah, that was definitely new.
There's also a butterfly handlebar design to give riders lots of options on how to hold on. It's got integrated lights and turn signals. It has a reverse throttle, something we talked about last week. Some people like to see that. Hydraulic disc brakes with a parking brake, 20 by 4 inch knobby fat tires. You can choose blue or black color options, and this one is currently priced at $2,400. So kind of interesting to see here because, this trike is doing things a little bit different. I mean, like full suspension on a trike, not a lot of that out there, that's for sure. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of how this one does. Hopefully we'll get one in for testing soon. And I'm very kind of curious to know, like the audience's thoughts. Is that something that appeals to you? Like full suspension, awesome. We've been saying for a while now, some of the trikes, differentiation gets a little bit harder and murkier with that particular model, but this one really does feel like it's doing things different.
I agree with that. I think this one has some interesting off-road potential as well, not only with the full suspension, but it's got the full-size 4-inch width on the fat tires with all-terrain tread.
If you're going over something like crushed gravel and stuff like that, or just, something a little bit more optionality. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So that, anyway, that does it for this week's news.
So we have had just a whole slew of things go live. We actually had a little bit of a backlog that we were working through, but happily now all those videos are up, so you can check them out on our channel. But let's kind of run you through some of what we've had going on. So John actually had a couple of things from Haybike go live.
Yeah, so we had the Haybike Mars 3.0 and the Ranger 3.0 Pro. Those are both revised versions of Haybike's folding fat tire e-bikes. There's a step through and a high step there. The Ranger 3.0 is the step through. They both have pretty powerful motors, torque sensors, lots of big upgrades there, full frame redesigns,
and of course full suspension on a folding frame, which is
Can't forget that.
Seldom seen.
I also had the Mach Wheel Tarmac go live. So that was a really interesting commuter e-bike. So kind of blends torque and cadence sensors with preset speed limits and just really makes the ride very easy to pedal and very easy to control your speeds on that bike. But then you had an EMTB, the Hauke Mustang.
Yeah, the Hauke Mustang. So they market it as an EMTB. I kind of view it more as like an SUV style. I wouldn't do any crazy intensive EMTB stuff with it, but it does have a really fun and powerful mid-drive motor on it. It does have a throttle as well, which is not a guarantee on a mid-drive. It's a little bit of a smaller stature bike, but overall it's pretty affordable, full suspension, very powerful mid-drive. So yeah, some appeal there is, for sure. So check that out if you are kind of wanting that bike that can do a little off-roading and a little on-roading as well. And then John took a look at the Apis.
That's right, the M2 Pro. So that is a very affordable full suspension fat tire e-bike. In fact, probably one of the lowest priced e-bikes that we've tested with that sort of setup. Pretty interesting, very very fast. That thing can reach like 36 miles an hour for those who are interested. So definitely check out that review if that is interesting. But Griffin, you had a few to round us out.
Yes, I do. So let's see. You hit the Leoguire Trailblazer Pro. That's Leoguire, Leopard, Jaguar combined, like the Liger, the mythical Liger. These animals that now exist. I don't know. Anyway, it was an interesting, that one was a more true blue EMTB. Really actually impressive debut for the brand's first EMTB, offering really confident frame, full suspension, 120, 140 RockShox setup. Has a not often heard about motor called the Motonova Magic T1. Had a few quirks to it, but actually was kind of good. Like once you really like dialed it and figured it out. So check out that review if you're interested in a kind of more affordable full suspension EMTB.
Cool.
Also had the Avelo Galaxy Lux go live. A really cool bike with a lot of very fun features, including NVIDIA drivetrain tech, which is something John and I like to play with whenever it comes through the door. Really comfortable cruiser there as well. Some more premium features.
Yeah, that's actually our second take on that bike as well. I did that very early in my career here.
That was like Young John. If you ever want to go see like
no.
Young John in the early days, that was like review 3 or 4 or something for you, wasn't it?
I don't think we used video scripts at that point, so
I
that
don't
was a
think
little
we
bit
did.
rough.
Growing pains.
For sure. Yeah.
And then rounding things out, we also had the Ertopia Carbon 1 Step 3 go live. That was a really, really awesome bike. Very lightweight cruiser. Had some good tech on that as well. A little on the smaller side too, but really a lot of fun if it fits you. So go check out all those reviews and let us know what you think in the comments.
And make sure you're subscribed so you can check all the new content out when it goes live. Each and every week, we like to take you on a tour of the country and sometimes the world and highlight various trails and cities that are very e-bike friendly. So today we are headed to Colorado. That
is correct. So a couple of months ago, I actually had a family reunion out that way and saw some bike paths while out there. And it was such a beautiful and gorgeous place. I was eager to talk about it some more. So taking a look this week at the Rio Grande Trail, which goes from Glenwood Springs to Aspen, Colorado. Honestly, if you're looking for one of the best rides in Colorado, this is one to definitely check out. It's a 42-mile path that goes from Glenwood all the way to Aspen, and it's built on an old railroad line. That means the grade never gets too steep, about 3% at the max, so a pretty gentle ride overall. It's smooth and it's easy cruising, whether you're new to e-bikes or just want a relaxing day on the saddle. So I actually vacationed in Glenwood Springs specifically. It was awesome, a really cool city.
Cool.
Downtown vibe was just really awesome. Had tons of really good food. Highly endorsed. Go check out Glenwood, or you can go, of course, check out the other end of Aspen, which is, of course, famous for its skiing and just really cool town. But, the scenery was the real star here of checking this area out. The path itself follows the Roaring Fork River, passing through like ranch lands and cottonwood groves. You can ride with, like Mount Sopris, kind of like looming in the distance. There's like wildlife there to check out as well. Bald eagles, elk, and maybe even a bear too. So bring the bear spray, John. But the accessibility is solid too. You can actually hop on at the Two Rivers Park in Glenwood Springs and then ride as much or as little as you want. Some folks will actually stop in Carbondale or Basalt, while others go all the way to Aspen. And if you don't feel like pedaling like uphill at all, you can actually get a shuttle run that will drop you in Aspen and you can coast back down. So
cool.
Kind of worked out.
Yeah.
So along the trail, you're gonna find plenty of culture and food stops. Like I said, tons of really good stuff. Barbecue, the pizza, the ice cream, all of those in Glenwood Springs I endorse. I've been there and tried it myself. But Carbondale's also got a really good art scene. And of course, Aspen is legendary with views and skiing in the wintertime if you're there in like later parts of the season. The best time to ride is spring through fall, with autumn, of course, just having those really awesome, gorgeous colors from some of the photos that you can see here, even though I, of course, was in there in the summer. But, summertime also looks really gorgeous too, with just tons of greenery everywhere you're kind of looking around. For e-bikers, it's good to know that there is a 20 mile per hour limit on the trail, and some places going to get really crystal clear understanding here might limit that to even class 1 e-bikes, so no throttles. So just kind of pay attention to the posted signage when you're checking out this trail. But all told, Rio Grande Trail looks like a bucket list one, kind of where I'm coming from.
It's Colorado. It's
Colorado.
Gonna be beautiful. Yeah.
It's a state just ridiculously gorgeous. So that's going to do it for this week's trail highlight. But if you've also ridden this trail, let us know what you thought about it down in the comments. Or if you have a suggestion somewhere for us to check out next week, you can let us know at questions@electricbikereport.com. All right, now we're going to jump into our personal favorite section, the questions and comments from you, our audience members. Thank you so much for writing in. As a reminder, let us know what you're thinking about a bike, what questions you have in the comments of any of the YouTube videos or back at the website, or last but not least, at questions@electricbikereport.com.
That's right.
Well, let's kick things off here with a question from Craig SOST3263 from the Ride One Up Vorsa review on YouTube, who says, "Thank you very much for all of your excellent reviews and the podcast."
You're welcome. That's what we're here for.
I have learned so much by watching and listening. The Vorsa is the first bike I've seen showing a pic of the rider and an adult passenger, and I see on their site you can purchase the seat and foot pegs for the passenger as options. Are there any other bikes in your best of list that would also fit that bill? It wouldn't be my primary use or reason to buy, but having that option would be nice. Thank you. Sure thing, Greg. Let's help him out.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you're looking at the Vorsa. That is probably where we would recommend you to start anyway. That bike is fantastic all around. One of the most powerful and customizable Ride One Up products that we've tested so far. And the cargo rack on that bike can support up to 150 pounds. Now, it can technically be expanded to 180, but that doesn't really count passenger accessories. Although you said that they were working on potential.
Ride One Up said that they hope to come out with a rack down the line that could fit like one piece instead of kind of like the two piece that you kind of put together. That they would hopefully be able to have like carry 2 child seats or something like that. But as far as I know, they haven't come out with that yet. So it's a maybe type thing down the road.
Down the road, sure. But if we're looking at bikes outside of the Vorsa, then you're probably going to want to look at like the cargo or utility categories. Although we've got a couple other options here. So looking at our best overall e-bikes video, since that's kind of what you were curious about, we have 2 products from Lectric. So that's the Expedition 2.0. That is a cargo bike. That one has just one of the highest payload capacities we've seen on the rear rack that can hold up to 300 pounds. And it also comes with footboards and seat pads for the rear rack with even just the base model, which is pretty cool. You have to add those things with really any other bike out there. But the Lectric XP4 might also be another option. So that's, of course, the new folding e-bike from Lectric. The rack, on that is a little bit lower to the ground. So that's something to keep in mind. But it is, that one can carry up to 150 pounds of a passenger. And for that, you would need to add the Buddy seat accessory, which is currently priced around 120 bucks. So.
And with those, like the rack being lower to the ground, like John mentioned, those 20-inch tires sometimes is a benefit. You're just kind of like lower to the ground. Your center of like gravity and balance is a little bit easier sometimes on the smaller diameter tire than the larger one of the Vorsa. Now that being said, you can definitely learn how to ride with someone on the back of the Vorsa. It's probably just a little bit more like practice to get it down like smoothly. But yeah, any of those bikes would all be great options we'd steer you towards.
Well said. Yep. Moving on, though, to a question from Land Based with Lures. And this is on the Aventon Rambless versus Trek Marlin Plus 8 comparison video. That was one you did, Griffin. Yeah, so this is directed at you. This guy says, "I think this guy is a Trek fanboy. Every time the Aventon was better than the Trek, he would defend the Trek." What do you have to say for yourself?
So, fair enough. For the record, I do actually own a Trek. So in some regards, I'm a Trek fanboy. But
That's
in this
fair.
case, really, when we do these types of videos, we're just trying to label what each bike is better at, or just some things to consider. There's always kind of like a counterpoint with the video, even if we do feel something is maybe a little bit stronger in certain regards. So for both of these bikes, we think they are pretty good. The Rambless has kind of a pretty clear power edge there. It's just a little bit of a stronger, faster, easier climbing type of bike. That is good for a lot of people. It's what a lot of people are actually looking to e-bikes for in the first place. That being said, there is, millions of people riding around on non-electric bikes, and a lot of them value just that workout, that like feeling of just being out in nature and stuff like that. And the more naturally tuned Bosch motor on the Marlin does give it that advantage where it just feels you are enhanced. It is still an e-bike experience, but it's a little bit, well, it's not a little, probably a lot more natural feeling than the Rambless is, just by direct head-to-head comparison. And then, of course, with Trek, you're getting decades and decades of some of the top R&D experience in all of bikes. So there are some good things to be had with the Marlin. Now, given the choice between the two bikes, I can't remember if I said this in the video or not. I probably personally actually would have gone with the Rambless. So my Trek fanboydom, whatever, kind of dies in that regard.
There it is. There it is, folks.
So if you're looking for power and range, definitely look at the Rambless. I always kind of lean towards power myself. That being said, if you do value that really, really natural experience, the Marlin is a good ride for that. So
cool.
All right, so the next one comes to us from CL Roger 4 on the Best for Seniors video on YouTube, who says, "Nobody has any battery fire problems? This is my biggest reason I don't buy one."
Valid concern, definitely. But, just straight up, there are far fewer battery fires that happen than the media would lead you to believe. We actually wrote a piece about this, a very lengthy piece about a year and a half ago, just kind of highlighting how, especially looking at like things happening in New York City, where there's very strict laws about this now. That a lot of the battery fires that were reported were actually attributed to like electric scooters and other products like those one wheel things.
Yeah, the one wheels, the e-bike became the catch-all term for a lot of things that were not technically e-bikes.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. But in the cases where they were related to e-bikes, which again, in the minority there were some kind of big red flags. So, primarily batteries and chargers were being paired together and they really weren't compatible. And so that was causing problems. So in a lot of those cases, but components or bikes that were stolen, pieces and parts were put together and just really sold for cheap. So, if you weren't really aware of what you were buying, again, that could cause problems and did cause problems. So, I mean, that's not to say that lithium ion doesn't pose a risk. That's definitely, there's a reason that this is a subject in the news. Lithium ion batteries are made of flammable materials. And if you don't, charge and treat your battery responsibly, then you can, run into problems here. So a few things to keep in mind just when you're shopping for an e-bike, if you are looking to avoid any issues like that. So, I mean, number one, buy from reputable brands. Most of them, in our experience, use batteries that, a battery pack is made up of individual cells that look like similar to your AA, AAA, and those are only made by a few companies. So we're talking like Samsung, LG, Panasonic, that sort of thing. So the reputable brands will use batteries containing good cells from reputable companies. But then we've also got, UL certifications. So those are things that like laws have put in place. Batteries that are UL 2271 certified and bikes that are UL 2849 certified are certified for safety and fire resistance. But then, also if you buy an e-bike from a more reputable brand, it is more likely to have a battery management system built into the battery itself, which basically handles the charging and the distribution of power to the individual battery cells, and keeping those things balanced and shutting things down if there is any sort of like overheating that can happen. So that's sort of like on the consumer side of things. But then once you actually own a product, there are some things that you can do to kind of help prevent any fires as well. So for example, you don't want to use a battery that has any damage. If it's dented or cracked or whatever, you definitely replace that. You don't want to leave your battery plugged in for really much longer than it takes to charge it, unless you are doing an actual like battery balancing thing, which is a totally separate discussion. And then basically just don't expose your battery to high heat. And then it's also a good idea, like if you are charging and you're concerned about this, to like charge on some sort of like cart that if it does catch on fire, you can just wheel it out of your house or garage or whatever. And then that way it's not going to cause any big problems. So.
Yeah. And, like my 2 cents on the whole subject is just, it's kind of like, when there's like an airline crash or something like that, like statistically speaking, you're more likely to die in a car crash than you are in an airplane crash.
Sure.
But when a car crash happens, maybe it makes the local news. When an airplane crash happens, it's making national news. It's kind of like that big type of topic because it's a really bad and horrific thing when it does happen.
And we love bad news, right?
And we, as humans, we kind of cling to bad news for whatever, issues we have going on with our psyches.
Exactly.
But, at the end of the day, though, although it makes the national headlines whenever there are battery-related problems with e-bikes, it's actually so few and so far between that, it's not something that I would say should deter most people from doing it. You should always take the proper precautions with this type of stuff. But that being said, the amount of incidents that happens is still very, very low when operating within like normal like boundaries and parameters and just, common sense. So
if this were a huge problem, the lithium ion batteries that are used in your phone, your power tools, your laptop, e-bikes, everything, they wouldn't be used if it was that big of a deal. So
100%.
Rest assured that it's generally very safe.
Yep.
Moving on, though, we have now for a comparison here, we are looking at a comment from the Hauke Mustang review that we talked about earlier. This comes to us from Ellipski3464. I'm looking at getting my first EMTB, and I'm torn between the Hauke Mustang and the Ride One Up Trail Rush. I've watched and rewatched your reviews on both bikes, and I'm still not sure which way to go. I would love to see a head-to-head comparison video between these two. Thanks, and keep up the good work. And of course, this is kind of generally the place where we now do comparisons. So here we are.
We'll kind of jump into our deep dive of the week with this one. As the person who reviewed both bikes, let me just kind of give you the 10,000 foot view, and then we'll kind of jump into the specific details. So on paper, they do look pretty similar, but I do think of these bikes as very different things. Kind of as I mentioned before with the Hauke Mustang, that's something I view actually more like SUV, kind of like does a little bit of both, whereas I view the Red Road Trail Rush maybe as a more traditional EMTB, a little bit more like better suited for single track and things like that. So kind of looking a little bit closer, like the Hauke strengths are its more powerful 500 watt mid-drive motor. It's got 130 Newton meters of torque. Of course, it's got a full suspension setup. And then once again, it has a throttle, which is pretty uncommon for mid-drives, but a definite benefit for a lot of people. On the other hand, its sizing is somewhat unusual, where it only has a single frame size. It runs on the small side. It's got 27.5-inch tires, front and rear, which it's not unheard of. But again, like there's a lot of like mixed wheel 29, 27.5, or full 29 setups these days. Whereas on the Trail Rush side of things, like it's got a more natural feeling and dialed in 250 watt mid-drive motor. That one's not the powerhouse type of thing, but it is very powerful while being extremely smooth. The Brose motor, I've still been saying this for years, is probably one of the most natural feeling out there. It's going to be a little bit more dialed in for single track. So if you have tight winding like sections that you're kind of going through, you start to value that control more than anything else versus the raw power you're getting from the Hauke, which is maybe a little bit better for double track and fire roads and things like that. It does have a few more sizing options to that frame with two different options to pick from. It does have 29-inch wheels. So it's going to just be a little bit better for a wider range of riders, in my opinion. And then, the only potential downside there is it's a hardtail. Some people really want the comfort of full suspension. You do get a pretty good fork up front, but again, hardtail in the back. So just a couple things to consider. Let's go ahead and kind of like break down, look through some of the testing data, and then just round things out with our recommendations. So I will go ahead and take the data for the Mustang, and I'll let John take over on the Trail Rush. So
sounds good.
Both of them have Class 2 and Class 3 modes. Well, actually, both Class 3 capabilities. The Trail Rush is a Class 3 only, can't actually be set to Class 2 unless you're just riding it under 20 miles per hour. But the Mustang has 5 pedal assist levels. It's each with measured steps and power. Gearing doesn't really support the full Class 3 speeds easily, so you need to pedal fast to kind of reach them. And the motor is punchy and powerful, though, at that high PAS levels for sure.
And then on the Trail Rush side again, so that again is Class 3 only, does have 4 power levels instead of 5. The power there, at least in our speed test, kind of ramped up the higher that the setting power level that you were using. The gearing though is really great. It does support Class 3 speeds. Pedaling is again just a little bit more natural, kind of meeting you at your level.
All right, then taking a look at our range testing. So the Mustang went between 38 and 77 miles from its 720 watt-hour battery.
And the Trail Rush went 30 and 81 miles from a 504 watt-hour battery.
So you get fairly similar results here, but you're seeing better results on the Trail Rush, probably because it's not outputting as much like pure wattage as the other one. That's how it's able to kind of stretch the mileage a little bit more.
Yep.
On the hill test in the pedal only, because the Trail Rush doesn't have a throttle, so we'll just leave that to the side. So the Mustang was actually very quick, going a minute and 16 seconds or a 15.6 mile per hour average.
And the Trail Rush finished the test in 2 minutes and 14 seconds with a 13.5 mile per hour average.
So this is like a little misleading. The Mustang's motor is very, very powerful, making it faster. That is like a flat out truth, but this can be bad on technical single track again, where precision is a little bit more highly valued. So again, if you're looking for that EMTB, and you're going to have some of that more techie section stuff like that, you might value the precision more than the raw power. But again, if you have just smoother roads and nothing in front of you, power there could be good.
There it is.
So in conclusion, the Mustang is kind of a bike who like the EMTB styling, but kind of prefer a little bit more power, maybe a little bit more work and play potential with riding it around the city, and then taking it on some of those like fire roads and things like that on the weekend. Just having the confidence that it's got that full suspension setup to make things a little bit softer, has tires ready for the job and all that stuff. Can do a little bit of both, I'd say.
For sure. And then rounding things out with the Trail Rush. So, this is the bike that we'd probably recommend to those who are a little bit more serious about spending time on single track dedicated mountain bike trails, just because of its better sizing and geometry, its more precise power delivery, and its just better overall component package. It's well spec'd, it's well priced. And if you're looking to get into mountain biking, that is a great place to start.
All right. Great question though. All right. So our next one comes to us from Wigenite.
Wigenite? I don't know.
There's a lot of different ways I could break that one up. So,
for sure.
From the Event in Level 3 video on YouTube, who asked her, I'm comparing to the Express 750 and was wondering if your speed charts, the no PAS speed is an accurate indicator of how easy the bike rides and rolls. 13 miles per hour versus 11 miles per hour in this case. Or do you not really make an effort to keep no PAS effort consistent between reviews? Fair question.
That is a fair question, and I'm honestly surprised that we haven't had this question before. We used to do our speed test totally differently. We made a switch, I don't know, a couple years ago, and we've never had this pop up since then. But to answer your question in short, no, it's not really consistent at this point. We used to try to do that, but that is very difficult just between like different riders and between different bikes that behave differently.
I think at one point we were like, give it a 70% effort, but like my 70 is not John's 70 is not your 70, things like that. And so it's like, I know, like I was pedaling like pretty hard and fast for a lot of bikes. And it's like, yeah, S1 gives you nothing because I'm already going 14 and it's programmed to only go to 10.
And then that was also like my early days. So like I wasn't comfortable with like putting in that much power at that point. So anyway,
it evolved.
The long story short is that like now we kind of just really treat every bike as an individual, and not that we try to like tailor what our graphs and our data looks like, but we really just try to like show off the power of every bike. So, if the power level in PAS1 is very low, then we don't want to like overtake that when we're riding without power, just so that you get that sense of the progression.
Yep.
So, there are still some trends that apply. If we are riding a lightweight city e-bike versus a fat tire bike, we are obviously going to go faster, very much more easily on the city bike versus the fat tire bike. And then so like commuters, like we were talking here, those are going to kind of fall generally in the middle. But also just looking a little bit closer at this case in particular, and some of the specs that sort of play into this test. In theory, the Express actually should be slightly easier to pedal than the Level. It weighs about 11 pounds less. In reality, they're both fairly similar. So there was a little bit of a difference in our basic results there, but don't take that as gospel, I guess, is kind of the big point here. So also, I wanted to point out that in regards to the Express in particular, since there are two frame styles, the high step and step through with, sort of city cruiser on the step through and more commuter focused on the high step, those are probably going to pedal a little bit differently. I would expect that you'd be able to go a little bit faster on the high step than the step through. So that hopefully that helps. But let's round things out with our final question today. This one's a little bit of a long one, so bear with me as I go through this. This comes to us from Huda There and the Ride One Up Trail Rush review on YouTube. He says, EBR is my go-to for e-bike reviews. You do a great job with such thorough and consistent reviews. We always appreciate that. I bought a Velotric Discover 2 back in December and am loving it with 1,700 plus miles. But I'm looking at the possibility of a second e-bike for a different experience. I'm 63 years old, 6'1" and 300 pounds. I was 345 when I got the Discover 2, and I'm interested in riding off-road, forest trails, and fairly mild 1 and 2 track, though I am a total novice in those areas. So I'm looking for a trail type bike under 3,000 that will handle my size while allowing me to get a workout and enjoying the challenge of the trails. A lot of people are going with fat tire bikes, but I feel they are less nimble and not what I'm looking for. I think I've narrowed down my choice to the Trail Rush and the Rambless, though of course I'm open to other suggestions. How would you see each of these bikes in relation to my size, ability, and type of riding I'm looking at? Which would you recommend?
Well, first of all, congratulations going, I think it was like 50 pounds of weight loss in there. So like, that's awesome. Keep that going.
Yes.
Like more power to you.
Speaking of more power to you.
Exactly. Speaking of more power to you, it's probably the way I'm going to steer you. So me personally, this is kind of like my recommendation. I like to have more power and then like tone it down if I need to, then feel like I might not have enough. For riders who are a little bit on the larger side, I do usually recommend something a little bit more powerful. In this case, in a direct head-to-head, the Rambless has more horsepower than the Trail Rush does. So while I do like both bikes a lot, and I could happily own either of them, in your scenario, I'd probably steer you a little bit more towards the Rambless with the extra power, and plus like with the extra range and stuff as well, just because, for like larger riders, like I know this from like all the testing we've done here, me at 235 versus like what someone gets weighing $180. Range results are different as well, so you get a little bit of more range on that bike as well. All signs in this case, I think, point towards the Rambless. There are some maybe things you could look to do with it. You might want to like upgrade the fork or something like that, but other than that, I think out of the box it's probably going to suit you a little bit better. So. But I think that does it for this week's questions and comments. Again, hit us up on this video, any of the other videos, and hopefully we'll jump into your questions next week.
All right, as Griffin mentioned last week, I had surgery, so I'm only going to snap with one hand this time. But it's time for Deals of the Week.
Deals of the Week.
Thanks for the hand there,
I tried
buddy.
to snap harder than usual, and I think I actually just messed it up. So it was just a weak snapping week. Sorry, guys.
A week snapping week. But
That's right.
speaking of the week, let's talk about the deals of the week. And we've got a lot going on with Labor Day coming up this weekend, as I'm sure you're aware when you see this video. Starting things off, though, with Club Ride Apparel. So they are having a huge sale up to 50% off, and they've got all kinds of stuff on sale. So shorts, pants, t-shirts, button-downs, flannels, whatever you want. We've gotten some gear into test. We've liked what we've felt so far. We only had a couple options there. They have a whole bunch of stuff out there, but definitely be sure to check that out. We'll leave links down in the video description.
Still one of my favorite flannels.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, we've got Ride One Up's Labor Day sale up to $500 off select e-bikes. So there is $100 off the Vorsa, one that we talked about earlier on the show, at $15.95, plus an extra $100 off if you buy two. There's $500 off of the Prodigy trekking e-bike, which is $25.95 for the belt drive CVT model and $19.95 for the chain drive model. So pretty good savings on that one as well.
For sure. And then rounding things out with Aventon's Labor Day sale, they also have a similar deal going on with up to $500 off e-bikes. And they've got some older models here that are really fantastic. So $500 off the Adventure 2, that is just $14.99. It's a fantastic bike that you'd have a hard time beating, to be honest, at that price. And then $300 off the Pace 500.3 City Cruiser. That one is also $14.99, as well as, a bunch of great deals on a bunch of other bikes as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so just a reminder, it's Labor Day weekend. Just about every brand's going to have some sort of sale going on. So if you want more options, you can also just head to our best electric bikes page or any of the different best pages we have on the website. There's no promise that they're all on sale, but there's a really good chance that a lot of them will be.
Most of them, for sure. So check us out and let us know what you buy.
As always, we're super appreciative to all of you who tune in to watch this show. We get a few thousand of you in here every week, and we couldn't be more grateful. And as a way of saying thank you, each week we like to highlight a writer or someone who left us a comment worth discussing. So, John, who are we taking a look at this week?
We're taking a look at Mickey. I'm not sure if it's I-70 or L-70, but anyway, they left a comment on the electric XP3 versus XP4 comparison that you did, Griffin. This is a lengthy comment, but I think the message here is great, so I was really happy to throw this one up there. They said, after researching, watching videos, I'm happy with my 3.0. I like where the throttle is. I even bought a thumb throttle to screw on there. I find it easier. I like everything about it except one thing, where the key is, but that's no big deal, and I got the long-range battery. I also bought the short-range battery to keep on the bike just in case I need it, and I changed the handlebars on mine so they come closer to me. It has the upgraded hydraulic brakes, and after 260 miles, I have to replace the back brakes now. They were pretty worn. By the way, they're not selling the XP 3.0 anymore. All in all, I'm happy with my 3.0. There's only a few things on there that I like. The color display upgrade and motor where they have the key now, but it's not much to actually sell this one and go out and get that one. 4.0, I don't have that many miles on it, and I've had it for over a year. So very happy to know that you're enjoying your bike and getting the most out of it. And, it just goes to show that an older model isn't necessarily inferior.
I was going to say, sometimes we feel compelled to get the new generation of whatever. Thank you, iPhone, for having done that to my brain. But sometimes you can just stick with what you got for a while and enjoy it and get the most out of it. And, always have to immediately upgrade and save it for 2 or 3 years down the line or something like that. But yeah, thank you for weighing in, sharing your experience and your love for your XP 3.0. Thank you.
All right, if you are still tuned in, we always appreciate you watching and contributing to the show. We like to, share our experiences and answer questions and, talk about places that you guys have ridden and the bikes that you've bought. It's just a joy. So
yeah, absolutely. Really Thank you so much for tuning in with us. Good to have John back on the show.
Thank you.
After a week off. And then, let us know, your thoughts, questions, comments down below. And as a friendly reminder, you can catch the audio only version of this on any of your favorite streaming platforms, your Spotify, your Amazon, your Apple Music, whatever it is you listen to, you can find us there. So that's going to do it from us here at Electric Bike Report for this week's episode of the Weekly Recharge.